Hey everybody, I'm Bella Deadwood. I know I've been gone a long time, and I'm sorry I left without explanation. I won't bore you with the details right now. If you would like to know, let me know, and maybe I'll explain in the comments or do a separate video for that. I don't really want to muddy up this video with details that really should just be put in a separate one. So to keep myself from rambling on any further, here are 3 creepy stories from Reddit. Number 1. This happened to me 7 years ago. I'm 20 years old now. My parents were away from home for a family emergency. I'm the only child, and whenever my parents left, I stayed home and usually didn't get scared. It was the 3rd night by myself. I was playing video games and eating junk food, and then I just hear a knock on the door. I was wondering, who could be knocking on someone's door at a late time like this? I could see the man peeping through the small glass window surrounding the door, and I could hear him yelling. He was saying, "I'm really hurt, please, let me come in." I asked what's wrong, and he said he had broken his foot. This seemed kind of weird to me. I asked how he broke his foot, and he told me he was taking a walk around the neighborhood and had tripped, and his foot landed in an odd way. He was begging me and screaming, telling me if he gets really hurt, he's going to sue me for not helping him. I said I would call up an ambulance for him and told him to wait outside. After I said that, he said, "If you don't let me in, I'll slit your throat and cut all your body parts in half." As soon as he said that, I grabbed my dad's shotgun he keeps on the highest shelf in the kitchen and the phone to call the police. I told the man the police are on their way. He told me they won't make it in time. He was trying to bust open my dining room window. By the way he was hitting it, it looked like it was about to break. I quickly ran upstairs into my room and decided to hide under my bed. I called the cops, and the operator told me that they would be there in a couple minutes. As soon as the operator said that, I heard the window break. He must have found a big rock in my front yard. I could hear him checking all the rooms downstairs. Then I heard him coming up the stairs. He checked my parents' bedroom and the closet. Then I heard him trying to open my door. I gripped the shotgun tightly in my hand and waited for him to break down the door. He was now kicking it as hard as he could. In just a couple hits, he knocked it down. I could see his feet as he tried to open the closet door in my room, which I had locked purposely to confuse him. He said, "I know you're in there." I was wondering if I should try for his leg or try to sneak past him and run out. I wouldn't be able to sneak out without making some kind of noise. At that moment, I had forgot I was under a bed and shot up. I hit my head, making a very loud noise. The man quickly turned around. "Oh, trying to be a smartass with me, huh?" he said. I heard sirens as soon as he said that. "Oh, fuck. You got lucky this time, but you won't next." He tried to run quickly out of my room, but I grabbed his right foot, making him fall very hard to the ground. I was holding it with all my might. I heard the police rushing up the stairs, and they got a hold of the man. I came out with my shotgun, and the police were pointing their guns at me now. I quickly explained everything, and the police understood. Apparently, they found the man's van parked in front of my house. He had many sharp knives, duct tape, a camera, and rope. I can't imagine what he would have done to me if I hadn't thought to lock that closet door. The police called my parents and told them what happened. They came home 3 days early. My mom hugged me very tightly, and so did my dad. My mom told me the man had been sentenced to 15 years with a chance of getting parole. We moved from that house a month later, and I had lots of nightmares about it. It took me a long time to get back to normal. I never stayed a night alone until I moved out of my parents' house. And I have 3 guns in my house. just to be extra safe, if anything like that ever happens again. Number 2. This story happened to me from late July 2012 till late 2014, with ongoing issues for my safety. On that note, I would like to remain anonymous for the safety of myself. This all began late July of 2012. I come from a small town where everyone knows everyone. I had just turned 18, and as most 18-year-olds in my town, we would like to go drinking down the beach and have a bonfire. I would have my regular group of friends who I would hang out with, and we would go for drives over to the bigger city and find things to do. I was on one of my drinking nights with a close friend of mine. We'll call him Adam. So Adam and I went for a drive from my parents' house in the rural area of the town and decided we wanted to go out to the big city to go watch a movie. After saying goodnight to my parents and hopping into Adam's car, we went to the movie theater and had a good time. After the movie had ended, we decided to go to McDonald's and get some food. This is where I met the man who ruined my life. He served my friend while I stood behind him at the counter, busying myself with my phone, texting friends and whatnot while Adam placed our orders. The guy who was serving us gave me a smile, and I smiled back as I said to my friend I was going to have a cigarette. He nodded, and I went outside. Moments later, he walked out with our food, and the guy who served us was walking behind him. He came and stood next to me as he asked for a lighter and introduced himself. We shall call him Chris. So, Chris sparked up a conversation and gave me his number and said he would like to take me out sometime for a movie or something. I agreed and made plans to see him the following weekend. After about a month of spending a lot of time with Chris and him coming out to my parents' place, we agreed to make our relationship official. He would spend most weeknights at my parents' house and drop me off at school in the morning, to the disgust of my friends, who all caught the bus. One morning, after Chris had stayed over and was driving me to school, I said to him that he should pull over next to a school bus, which was waiting for students to climb aboard. One of my friends was waiting next to the bus, so I stuck my head out the window and told her to climb in. This was mistake number 1, introducing the two of them. A few weeks after my friend met Chris, we broke up, and it was a messy breakup. Shortly after the breakup, the scary shit began to happen. I would hear people walking around the gravel driveway at random hours of the night. I would see Chris's car sitting down at the end of my parents' road under the streetlight before I would go to bed. The stalking progressed to where I could hear him standing outside my ranch slider, talking to someone, and then trying to jiggle open the garage door and walk around on the gravel. Things began to really become scary for me when I would receive phone calls and texts from a random number during class about how this person was watching me as I would walk to the bus every morning and what my parents were doing throughout the day, and threats with things like how they were going to break into my house and rape me and then hide the body somewhere deep in the forest where nobody would ever find me. At this time, I was setting my end-of-year exams and preparing for university applications and feeding all sorts of information to my friend, who we'll call Julia. She, unknown to me, had been spending more time with Chris since the first introduction when he gave her a lift to school. This was a fatal mistake on my behalf, because she knew exactly where I was going to be, what my timetables were, and when I would most likely be alone and an easy target for Chris to find me. They began to date, and the texts became more frequent from both of them. Even an attempt to harm me one evening when I was staying late with people from my drama class, working on our final performance for the year, and would be alone in an easily accessible classroom until about 10 p.m. Some of my classmates noticed his car parked across the road from where our classroom was, and said it looked like there were two figures sitting in the car waiting for me to come out. I freaked and rang my mom and informed her. She came and collected me and took me home, watching the road to make sure they hadn't followed us. The shit really hit the fan when I became so scared that I had to go to the police about the messages I received and the fact that there was someone coming onto the property to try and break in and harm me or my parents. Chris carried weapons in his car because he liked to hunt, and I knew it was also for security purposes because he was in the underground world of drugs. Once I had logged a formal complaint against Chris and informed the police of his weapons he had on his person and in his home, the police went around and had a look for anything, but they found nothing, which set him off even more. That evening, he sat down at the end of the road as per usual and waited for all the lights to go out. Then, he came up along the front paddocks of the house and up the driveway. I was sleeping in my parents' living room, which was right beside the driveway with the big open windows and ranch sliders to my brother's room. I heard him walk along the side of the house on the driveway and towards my flat, thinking I was in there. And I heard the sound of a gun being cocked. I sat up for a moment, thinking about what I should do. I commando crawled down the hallway to my parents' room and quietly said to my mom, "Someone's outside. Mom, get up, there's someone outside." My dad bolted upright, grabbed his robe and his .22 rifle, and ran out of the kitchen door, setting up the sensor light, and bolted down the driveway, chasing after something running through the information padlock. I sat up for a moment, thinking about what I should do. I commando crawled down the hallway to my parents' room and quietly said to my mom, "Someone's outside. Mom, get up, there's someone outside." My dad bolted upright, grabbed his robe and his .22 rifle, and ran out of the kitchen door, setting up the sensor light, and bolted down the driveway, chasing after something running through the information paddock. After that night, things calmed down for about a month, until I was packing up to move 10 hours away to a new city. The night after I left, my mom rang to say someone had been in my house and had walked in with muddy boots on, because there were rather large footprints all through the house, as if someone was trying to scope the place out. Odd things would happen at my parents' place, like trees would get cut down in the middle of the night, or a car would drive super slow past with all the lights off at odd hours of the night. Things started happening to me down at my apartment. Each morning, when I would go out, there would be a car always parked across the road with windows tinted out, watching me, and I would receive voicemails of a violent nature from private numbers. This kept up till last year when it all stopped. No phone calls, no sightings, random cars, no odd things going on at my parents'. Every time I go home, I never tell anyone when I'm leaving and when I'll be back at my parents' for my own safety. I get flashbacks when I hear something like a car backfire, or I see cars similar to Chris's driving around. I always keep my home address private and my phone number restricted for my own safety, because he's always hunting for me, and I don't want to put other people at risk. I always say to my mom, if I go missing, we know where to start looking. Update. So, this was originally written at the end of 2015 and kept private because there had been a spark of activity. I had traveled home for the Christmas period. Stupidly, my sister had said to a few friends, who are well known for not keeping their mouths shut and see Julia on a regular basis, that I'm going to be home until the middle of January. I wasn't actually at my parents' home until the middle of January, but my father had an encounter with Chris. First time in 3 years we had seen him, and he had pulled up alongside one of the fences and stuck his head out of the window. This is normal to have people talking to my dad from their cars, because we live in such a small rural area. We're rather close with our neighbors, who are all far distance away. He stuck his head out and asked if I was around, and that I was an old friend. My dad clicked instantly who it was, and said if he didn't leave right now, he's going to grab his gun, and that's the end of it. Chris laughed and said, "We both know you won't be doing that before I put 2 bullets in your head. Now where is she?" My dad, thinking on his feet, said I was in a hospital 3 hours away, and I'm now living in the biggest city north of my parents' house. He thanked my dad and said to him to watch his back. My dad didn't tell me this when I came home for recovery, because he didn't want to stress me out. But I changed my cell phone number and made sure my social media was extremely tight, with no geotags or anything that could give away where I am. It's scary to know that someone still holds a grudge to this day, because I know some extremely sensitive information about him. Number 3. I'm a female, and the story I'm about to share with you happened almost 10 years ago. At the time, I was 17 years old, and like most teenagers my age, I was content to lock myself away in my room with my laptop and headphones. In autumn of that year, my parents went up north for the weekend. We live in Michigan, and the Upper Peninsula is famous for its scenery that time of year. I was left with the house to myself for the entirety of the weekend and thought nothing of it. I enjoyed my privacy and didn't mind being alone. Let me tell you about my house and where I lived. Our house is very old and a modest dwelling, just 2 floors and a basement. All the bedrooms are on the first floor, since the second floor is an unfinished attic. The house itself is about 8 miles from the nearest town. The backyard is pretty large, with an even larger cornfield stretching out for acres and acres, separating the property from the lake on the other side of the trees. The cornfield stretches partially around the house, creating a wall between our house and our neighbors to the east. It wasn't isolated by any means. There are 5 houses very near, 1 on each side and 3 across the street. A local hunter, a farmer, a retired couple, a construction worker, and the local preacher were the people I call neighbors. It's a quiet road, little traffic, and only the occasional coyote howl to disrupt the night. A nice, calm place to live. It was day 2 of my weekend alone. It was a chilly evening, so I shut my window and locked it before I huddled up on my bed with my laptop. I've always been a big fan of urban legends, especially legends that have some truth woven into the tale. Truth always makes a good story better and makes a scary story all the more frightening. That night, I had no idea that I was about to take part in my own scary tale. While I zoned out on my laptop, watching horror videos and reading stories online, I heard an odd noise over my headphones. I pulled one speaker away from my ear and focused on the sound. The sound was coming from my window. My bedroom is a corner bedroom, and as a result, I have 2 windows. One window facing my neighbor to the west, and the second window faced the backyard. It was the second window that had the strange noise. At first, I thought leaves and loose branches were getting blown against the screen since it was fall, and the weather in Michigan can get pretty harsh and unpredictable. But my reasoning didn't quite fit with the sound. It wasn't a banging or a rattling. It was like metal wires snapping. I removed my headphones and used my laptop screen as a light to see where I was walking without putting a glare on the window's glass. The curtains and blinds beneath are drawn, preventing anything from outside being able to see inside. I was nervous about looking outside. I was alone, and I had no idea what was going on. I hugged my wall as I slipped my fingers under the curtains and slowly, carefully, pulled down one of the blinds so I could look outside. There, standing in the darkness outside my window, was a person holding a knife, cutting at my screen. My heart skipped a beat as my blood ran cold. My instincts told me not to make a sound and stay out of sight. I slid down my wall and crawled on my hands and knees to my cell sitting on the small table next to my bed. I called 911 and whispered everything to the person on the other line. I told them someone was outside my window and he had a knife, and that I was alone. The operator stayed on the line with me and kept reassuring me that the police were on the way. I could hear my screen being cut open. I kept telling her I wanted to run, but she insisted I stayed put and didn't make a sound. Suddenly, the snapping sound of the screen wires being cut stopped. I listened, and I almost screamed in fear when I heard a new sound. The knife was digging at the wooden frame of the window, and the man tried to pry it open from the outside. The motion light in the backyard suddenly flashed on, just seconds before the red and blue lights of the arriving police car shone through my other window. I listened carefully and heard someone running from the car to the backyard. I could also hear their radio clicking on and off as I checked the area. A loud knock at the front door made me jump. I heard a man call out for me, identifying himself as a cop. Still scared, I opened my bedroom door and crept down the hall. I peeked into the living room and didn't see anything. The knocking persisted, and again the cop identified himself. I peeked through the window in the front door and saw him standing there, his eyes still checking the yard. I flung open the door and almost pulled the cop inside my house, just so happy to see someone else. He asked if I was okay and if I could give a description of the man I saw. I couldn't. He was wearing all black and had a hood pulled up which shrouded his face. All I could do was describe the large hunting knife he used to cut my screen. His partner joined him on the front porch and told us that he didn't see anyone in the area. I kept insisting on what I saw, and they of course believed me, since the patrolling cops saw the damage on the screen. The cops did a second sweep of the property and made sure every single window was secured and that the doors were locked and the garage was secure. Before leaving, the cops told me that they'd keep a patrol car in the area, but they were confident that whoever I saw wouldn't be back. They just figured that it was some teenager who was trying to break in through my window and got scared when he saw the police car arrive. I thanked them and proceeded to double-check the locks for myself. I wanted to call my mom, but I knew my parents were already on their way home and would be back by morning. Unable to go back into my room, I chose to sleep on the couch in the living room and tell my parents as soon as they walked in the front door. About an hour later, after I was finally able to relax and started to drift off to sleep on the couch, I heard a loud bang against my back door. I sat straight up and looked through the kitchen into the back mudroom that leads to the back door. Bang! This time, I knew I was in danger. I grabbed my cell and dialed 911 again. This time, I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a large knife from the butcher's block and huddled on the corner against the counter and cabinets. I pressed the phone to my ear as the operator, a man this time, continued to talk to me so I didn't feel alone. Bang! I gripped the knife tighter and began to mentally try to psych myself up. If this man managed to get inside, would I be able to defend myself? He had a knife. Maybe that's why I grabbed one too. But I didn't know anything about him. How tall was he? How strong was he? Did I even stand a chance? Bang! I heard the wood on the doorframe crack. The old door was locked on by a chain. One more hard kick would surely break the door down, and then I didn't want to think about it. I prepared for the final bang, for the door to give in, and for that man to attack me when I heard a voice yelling over the banging noise. "Get on the ground! Drop the knife!" "Oh, thank God," I said out loud. "The cops are here." The operator on the line, who had been speaking to me throughout the entire ordeal, continued to try and keep my calm. I listened to the cop order the man to drop the knife over and over again, but I knew that the crazy bastard wasn't listening. Then another bang. But it wasn't from someone kicking the back door. It was from someone firing a gun. It was silent, and time seemed to stand still. A gentle knock at the front door drew my attention. The same cop as before was once again identifying himself at the front door. I told the operator a cop was at the door and hung up. I opened the front door, the knife still in my hand. The cop saw it and very calmly suggested I put it down. My hand was gripping the knife so tightly that my knuckles were white and my fingers were cramped. When I dropped the knife, the cop escorted me from the front door to his car, which was parked in the side yard. Under the motion lights of the backyard, I could see his partner standing over the body of the man in black. I could see his knife lying on the ground, just inches from his hand, and even from the distance, I knew there was blood on the blade. The man himself looked like he had been dead for weeks. His hood had fallen from his face, revealing it to the night. He was white and impossibly pale. His skin was unnaturally aged with heavy wrinkles and lots of discoloration. His hair was long, stringy, and blonde. His eyes, still open, were sunken into his skull. I was taken to the police station to deliver a statement and to ensure that there were no other attackers on my property. When I told them everything I knew to the interviewing cop, another cop walked into the room with a file in his hands. He whispered something to the first cop and handed him the file. I asked the cop if they knew who the man was, and he nodded. I asked to know who he was and what he wanted. At first, the cop didn't want to tell me, but I needed to know. I managed to coax the cop into telling me, and a part of me wishes I let it go. The man was a chronic junkie who abused any and all drugs he could get his hands on. He was also a violent schizophrenic with bipolar disorder. He used to live in the area until he was finally locked up in a mental hospital about 20 years prior. The act that got him locked away all those years ago was a result of his attempt to burn down a local church, declaring that he was the true Son of God, and that all religious figures were false prophets and tools of Satan. The cops figured that he was trying to break into my house because he thought it was where the preacher lived. He had the wrong house and would have killed me anyway if he had gotten inside. After a moment of letting this sink in, I asked why the cops didn't see him the first time I called. His answer sent shivers up my spine, and now I never look at my backyard the same. He told me that the man had hidden in the cornfield the first time and was watching the house from between the rows. He had never left. He was always there, watching the house and waiting for the police to leave. He truly was crazy, and I'm glad he won't be around anymore. Hey guys, thank you for watching my video. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank Unit 522 for creating a subreddit called Free Horror Stories. Basically, if you post your story there, you maintain the copyrights to your story, but you are granting other people permission to read your story. This is going to save a lot of people a lot of hassle, and I would like to bring attention to it so that more people will share their stories on there so that scary storytellers won't get in as much trouble, since the copyright laws have been rather strict lately. Once again, if you want to know what happened that made me leave YouTube for a little while, or want to know what was going on in that time, just let me know. I'll probably make a video about it if there's any interest, but it won't be attached to a storytelling video, and it wouldn't be in place of one. So I'm going to try and go back to my old schedule, which was, if I remember correctly, every Sunday, I think. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'm just getting back, so I won't leave you with your nightmares just yet. Good night.